Hello again, my name is Scott McGurn. I'm doing a series on the human ego. The first video in the series was called Trump's Ego, the Meaning of Life. I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm not here to criticize him either. I put that name on video number 1 only to attract attention. Getting people to watch on YouTube means finding something to get them to watch. Anyway, the point of this study on the human ego is that everything that is contaminated in our lives, everything that is separating us from happiness, everything that is contributing to our dysfunction has its basis in human ego. Understanding that is critical to understanding everything else. When I do these videos, I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things, but it's all going to relate back to the difference between the human ego and true love. True love is good, ego not so much. In fact, not at all. Let me begin by reiterating, what is the human ego? What does it focus on? There are only 2 sources of understanding that a human being can have, okay? Let's call one of them enlightenment, okay? That's true love, that's the Holy Spirit. We'll call it enlightenment so everybody can be on the same page. Okay, so that's good. What's bad? The human ego. What does the human ego think about? The human ego thinks about 4 things, okay? All of its understanding comes to us in the form of these 3 things. The human ego dwells on money. The human ego dwells on property. The human ego dwells on the all-important status. And of course, empty gratification. If the average man looks at a woman, I say average is a kindness, let's say all men, he's thinking about empty gratification. How attractive is she? Does she improve my status in the community? What are my friends going to think if I'm with her? Will she make my ex-girlfriend jealous? Everything that the average person thinks when they look at whatever, when they're walking through the grocery store, when they're watching TV, as I mentioned in the last video, could even be on his or her wedding day, okay? Money, property, status, empty gratification. That's all the ego is about. And people spend 99.9% of their day dwelling on those 4 things, even though they may not realize that they do it. And that's the real harm. They don't realize that they're doing it. But the fact is, there are only 2 sources of understanding. You can only glean, you can only learn, you can only grow from one or the other. If you're relying on ego, then instead of going up the evolutionary ladder, you're going down the evolutionary ladder. Okay? I use the example of Donald Trump. He thinks he's going up the ladder. He believes in the arena mentality. Okay? The ego views the world not as a global village, but as an arena mentality. Everything is an arena to the ego. Whether it's the family unit, that's an arena. Okay? You compete with your wife, you compete with your children. A woman competes with her husband. Okay? A couple living together, they compete with each other. They're always looking at things in terms of the ego, but they're doing so without realizing it. I'm going to pick up a few notes here. Okay. Now, the ego believes in separation. Now, this is critical. I don't want to lose you on this point, okay? Enlightenment is about all things being one. It's about unity. Some people can call it singularity, but it's unity. We are our brother's keeper. I am connected with the tree and the antelope. I am connected with all people. They're me, I'm them. That's unity, that's enlightenment. Ego is about separation, okay? Separation is the basis of denial. It is. All denial holds its basis in the ego's concept of separation. That's where the mentality comes from. It's from ego, all right? All negativity extends from human ego. Overcoming human ego is the hardest thing we will ever have to do because it's ingrained in us from conception to death. It's ingrained in us. It's reasserted within us every single moment of every day of our lives. Trying to deprogram ourselves from ego is the hardest thing we will ever do. Okay? It's the basis of denial. Remember the perspective I shared in the last video. If you are sound asleep in heaven, you already have enlightenment. In fact, you have an understanding of all things. But you've fallen asleep. You're having a terrible nightmare. Based on your intelligence, your psyche has created all things in this world. Every character, every person in this world is you. Everything you love, everything you hate, it's all here. Represented in the different characters in the dream. Alright? It's all here. Everything in the dream is you. If your heart is true love and you separate yourself from that, okay, true love is in your heart. It's your heart. It's who you are. But separation, oh no, true love isn't me. No, no. If I give in to true love, I'm not going to be able to get that promotion at work. So I'm going to do the promotion thing first. I'm going to rook the other guy. I'm going to get ahead. I'm going to lie to the boss and I'm going to get that promotion. You know, true love is a nice notion. It's pie in the sky, but it's not for me. So I've taken my heart out of my chest and I'm giving it away to somebody else. All right. So enlightenment, that's your mind. That's your brain. You've got enlightenment. That's how you process. You've got enlightenment. Enlightenment is your mind. Well, enlightenment. That's a great idea. You know, I'd love to be able to understand all things. I'd love to be able to understand the great mysteries of life and understand how love can be more valuable to me than selfish ambition. But you know what? That's really not for me because it's so inconvenient. I've got things to do, things to acquire, people to defeat in the arena. So I'm going to take out my brain, I'm going to give that to somebody else. So she's got my heart and he's got my brain. What a great plan that is. Somebody else has your heart, somebody else has your brain. Okay, so 90% of who you are now belongs to someone else in your dream. Your dream characters have now received what you have forfeited. You've taken yourself apart, distributed the pieces to others, and now you think you're going to function as a human being? Okay, I'm not judging you because we're all in the same boat. I've done it. It took me 50 years before I got the idea, before it came to me through. I can't give myself credit for that. I stumbled upon it as most people do. I stumbled upon it as most people do. It all comes down to the ego, all right? The ego versus enlightenment. Call enlightenment true love, call it the Holy Spirit, call it whatever you want. Call it your friend because it is. Ego is not your friend. That was the title of the last video. This video is going to be titled Rise Above the Nightmare because this nightmare that we've created out of our own psyche, where people hate each other, they're jealous of their own children, they sabotage, they steal, they molest their kids, they lie about it, and then they celebrate what they've done because the ego is so satisfied that they got ahead. They've climbed to the top of the bone pile. They cheated everybody else before they themselves could get cheated. And they justify that by saying that they would have been cheated, but the others weren't smart enough to do it. I did it to them first. I rooked out my partner out of his share of the company, and now I'm the boss. I'm the chief of the bone pile. I got a car that's going to make everybody else jealous. I am so satisfied as a human being. I've got my mansion on top of the hill, and I'm the chief of the bone pile. I'm way ahead. I'm on the top of the ladder, and everybody else, well, they're just a bunch of losers. Can you see how self-defeating that perspective is? I think you can. And that's why I'm sharing this with you. I mean, how are you supposed to function without your own heart and mind? How can you forfeit 90% of who you are and move forward? Okay? Now, here's something else. As we go through life, what do we experience? We experience some terrible people. All right? Maybe you were in a church where you got molested by a priest. Maybe you got molested by your dad or your uncle. Maybe you watched a friend when you were 8 years old. Your buddy got sucked into a snowblower in Montreal and you saw his guts pour out. And it traumatized you and you're stuck with that trauma. Now science teaches us that when we've been traumatized, we're actually reliving that trauma 24 hours a day. And even in our sleep, the trauma never goes away. And because we've been traumatized, other hurtful experiences will compound that trauma. And what we end up with is a terrible case of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Guys coming out of the military, they're best known for it. But the fact is, they're a small percentage of the people that have that. Okay, I know, I've got PTSD myself. I understand what it means. I understand trauma and I understand how bad experiences compound it, all right? We spoke about forgiveness. When you forgive other people in the dream, you're forgiving yourself. When you can look at a terrible experience that you've had, all right, and understand that because this is a dream, not only do those people not exist, but that experience didn't really happen. That concept, that perspective allows you to let go of pain as nothing else ever has before. So whether the concept of life as a dream is correct or not, it is a way out of PTSD. Okay? So embrace that concept. You're asleep in heaven. You already have enlightenment. You're having a nightmare and everything in that dream came out of your psyche. Let it go. Forgive yourself. The terrible thing didn't happen. Yes, you got traumatized by what happened in the dream, but now you realize it's a dream and you're letting it go. This takes years, but understanding the concept can make it happen. We're going to talk more about this in the next video. In fact, we got a lot more to talk about. And this isn't just about ego. That's the basis. I want you to understand that so we can talk about other things, a lot of other things. You can expect a lot more. This is a series on the ego. I'm going to do one more at least. After that, put on your seatbelt because there's plenty more where that came from. My name is Scott McGurn. Thank you for your time.